All right, it's Friday. No, it's not. It's Saturday night. That means it's time to run it back. This is Run It Back, NBA Week in Review. We're the Peach Basket, more than just a website, but really a community of like-minded, passionate basketball fans. We exist to give a voice to the fan, and we are the home of fan experts. And I'm ridiculously excited tonight. You know, I always start our shows like that. I talk about how we're passionate fans. I don't think anybody's more passionate about the game tonight than Bo. Bo is a Milwaukee Bucks fan. He covered the Bucks for us. He's been along for this ride, and I'm really, really excited to have him here today to talk about the Eastern Conference champion Milwaukee Bucks. But we're going to do this in order first, all right? So we're going. That's a little bit of a tease, but let me start by saying, Bo, welcome. How you feeling?
Through the roof. As a fan of not many winning teams, you can't put into words how this feels to make it to the championship. I mean, It's incredible.
Yeah. No, and I'm excited to talk about it. We're going to dive into it, but we're going to start first by jumping over to the West and talking about the Bucks opponents, right? The Phoenix Suns. The Suns are interesting. They haven't been there either. They haven't had a whole lot of success as a franchise. 28 years since they've been to the finals. But there's an interesting difference between the Suns and the Bucks. If you just take a look at the franchise, right? Mm-hmm. Neither one of them necessarily have had a lot of success in the NBA. But the Suns are unique in that over the last 3 years, counting last season and the 2 years prior to that, they were one of the worst teams in the NBA. They were fodder. They were bad. This team went from one of the worst to one of the best quicker than any team has ever done it. It's pretty amazing, but it's also, I don't want to call it a red flag, but it's interesting, right? Deadspin wrote an article, and it's clickbaity, absolutely, but it really kind of encapsulates this thing with the Suns. Basically, whoever wrote this, I wish I could call it out, and I might later, but whoever wrote this basically entitled their article, "The Phoenix Suns Finals Appearance Reeks to High Heavens," because they did have an interesting road to get there. ESPN called their appearance unprecedented because of the fact that they remained relatively healthy when a lot of teams, including the Bucks, aren't. CP3 all of a sudden is an offensive juggernaut. He's not a scorer, but he had 31 points in the second half against the Clippers. They missed the playoffs last year, and now all of a sudden, they're in the finals. So in a lot of ways, outside of Phoenix, you can take a look at the Suns and say, man, they circumvented the process a little bit, right? There's a process. You get to the first round, then you get to the second, and you have a couple of, letdowns, and then boom, you make it to the conference finals and you lose, and then you're in the finals. That's more or less the Bucks route, over the last few years, but not the Suns. They were out last year. Now they're in the finals. So let me ask your thoughts there, and I'm going to ask you a specific question about the Suns after, but what are your thoughts on that in general? Do you think the Suns, and it doesn't matter, I mean, they're in the finals, Bucks are going to face them, but did they circumvent the process a little bit here?
I think when you put asterisk beside anything, I mean, in my opinion, almost every season has asterisks to the team that loses.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of the last finals that the winner didn't have a few advantages, not only through the playoffs, but even in the finals of getting injuries. I mean, we really don't get to see two juggernaut teams face each other.
Yeah.
In either conference, really. And it really stinks. But, a couple years ago in the West, people were dying to see the Warriors and the Rockets, and James Harden wouldn't show up, or Warriors started having injuries. It just, I think it's hard to say it's an asterisk, but at the same time, I don't know many people that had the Suns picked as deep as they are.
Right.
I mean, they made it through some teams that shocked a lot of people.
Yeah. No, the road is very interesting, right? They beat the Lakers, and Laker fans will tell you, the Lakers were hobbled. They dismantled the Nuggets, which is shocking.
That was, yes.
Yeah, 4-0 was just weird. I don't know how that happened.
Yes.
And then they beat a Clipper team that was also hobbled, right? They were
Mhm.
without Kawhi Leonard. They were without Serge Ibaka, although he didn't play a lot. And then near the end, they were without their starting center, Zubats. So, yeah, unprecedented. You could say they had a little bit of an easy ride, but there's always injuries. It's just the way it is. You've got to beat the teams in front of you with whatever you've got. Roll of the die,
Yes.
And the Suns did that. So credit to them. I want to talk a little bit about, and I know that you're so excited, really excited about the Bucks victory, and you should be. And I hate to ask you to think about your opponents right now, but let's talk a little bit about what the Suns need to do to beat this Bucks team. Let's assume that Giannis is going to be healthy. Well, he likely won't be healthy. I don't think anybody is healthy right at this point.
Yeah.
But let's assume he'll play, right?
Yeah.
What do you think the Suns need to do? And you can't say nothing to beat the Bucks. What's the key? What's the keys?
I would say, out of all the teams we faced, I mean, the Suns have a great post with Ayton, and I mean, he is incredible. I've loved watching him play. I hate watching him in the finals, but the one thing about us is we were, quote, the bigger team that could take out these smaller teams like the Brooklyn Nets and the, same way with the Hawks. And it would work, but at the same time, in this NBA, it's about the consistency of, are you jacking up threes? Are you making them? How are your role players doing? And I think the Suns have done that. They have that consistency every game. And the thing that makes them different from the Bucks is, I mean, we could have a half where we play incredible. We could have second half come out strong or weak or whatever. But the Suns, I mean, through everything, they've just had this consistent. They're always showing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was similar to kind of when Trae Young. I said this before the series started, that he would have to put up at least 50 points to win the series every night. I was off. He had to put up 48 to win that first game.
Yeah.
And then the team obviously erupted. But same with the Clippers. Unless you got Paul George, scoring 50, 40, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not the same. They have so many great role players, and the Suns are stacked.
Yeah.
I mean,
here's what's interesting to me, having watched the Suns. I'm an LA guy. I watched the Clippers series, the Lakers series, and what's interesting about the Suns is they've won, games that were high scoring games. They've won games that were scored. Both teams scored in the 80s. They just win, and sometimes you're left scratching your head. How did they pull that off? Right? How did they do it? And in a lot of ways, that was the Lakers of last season in the bubble. The Lakers were good, and they won it, and credit to them. But what was interesting to me is sometimes you would scratch your head, right? Yeah. Because, Miami, I thought they were better, Miami, quite honestly, but I thought their route last season in the West, they just won. They didn't make any excuses. They just won games. And sometimes you were left wondering, how did they pull it off? And the Suns are doing that this season, which kind of makes them scary, right, in that regard. Yes. Because they've got that mindset. They're winners, right? And I think every team that gets to the finals obviously are winners. But they have a way of just finding a way to win. Now, that being said, the Clippers, when they beat them, kind of dominated them. So I think that's kind of the key to taking this Suns team out is just punching them first, right? Yeah. And the Bucks have the ability to do that. I think the key to the Suns though is not Chris Paul, not Ayton. Ayton's phenomenal, and not Booker. Those three guys have got to show up, right? So I'm working under the assumption that those three will be who they are, right? Because they have to be. If that doesn't happen, it's over. So to me, the key is going to be the other guys, right? Cam Payne, who was absolutely phenomenal first two games against the Clippers. Jay Crowder, Bridges, Cam Johnson, those guys have got to show up. They've got to hit the corner threes because they will be open, more than likely, because we're probably going to double team Booker. You guys don't have to double team. I think that's what's neat about the Bucks, though. The Bucks are so good defensively. You may not have to double team Booker or CP3 because Drew Holiday's a phenomenal defender and Giannis is too. And those guys, and Middleton's good. You guys are probably okay. But I think the key is going to be those role players for the Suns. Yes.
And not to mention something I still think about, I don't understand why he wasn't used even more, was PJ Tucker.
Yeah.
Who did a phenomenal job. Yeah. Phenomenal job on Durant. You can only do so well.
Sure.
But he was on him. I mean, being, I believe, one of, if not the greatest players playing right now. And I mean, he's not one of our top players, but man, on the defensive end, we have a bunch of guys that can they can switch off, they can do all that. But
listen, you just encapsulated what should scare all of Phoenix right now. I just rattled off some incredible elite defenders: Giannis, Drew Holiday, Middleton. I wouldn't call him elite defender, but he's a good defender.
Yeah.
And I didn't bring up PJ Tucker, who is an elite defender. Yeah. And he will probably get, I think, Booker. But it's weird because Booker's a guard, so I don't know how that'll work. But right now there's such a fuzzy line between guard and forward that I do think Tucker is going to get a lot of time guarding him. But it should be interesting. But yeah, that's a good defensive team. But please,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing that I think not a lot of people talk about in the sports world, but it carries a bunch of these teams through the playoffs, through injuries, through the finals, through winning, is chemistry.
Yeah.
If you have team chemistry, and the Suns, I think Chris Paul obviously is a big part of that, but they are a unit. I mean, they look like a team that win or lose, they get on the bus together, they hang out. Like it feels like there is a definite connection there. And you have to have that. And if you have that edge over another team, not that I don't think the Bucks do, they're very close, great chemistry. But that's helped the Phoenix Suns. They've played a lot of teams with, are they as close as they were? Is this guy leaving? Is this guy staying? And I think they're just all locked in.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Chemistry counts. You rarely see good chemistry with losing teams, though, right? But so I think chemistry sometimes is kind of is what you see when you win, right? But you bring up a really good point because and it's a really good segue. Let's jump to the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers are a good example of what I'm about to say. The Clippers right now are a good team. They've been a good team. They, like the Bucks, have had some success, but just have not been able to knock the door down. Where the Bucks, they knocked the door down hard today, which is great. But the Clippers have they keep inching closer. But the Clippers are interesting because right now they don't know about Kawhi Leonard, right? So when you're playing with a guy who may not be your teammate next year, and he's hurt, and then he was up in the suite watching, and there's a lot of people didn't like that, and then he came down to the bench, and I do think it impacts you, and I do think that there was a little bit of a, if nothing else, there were just whispers, right, for the Clippers, which does not help, right, when you're playing a team like the Suns, who they're winners and they're a cohesive unit and they're healthy. You need everything to be right to beat them.
Yes.
And the Clippers didn't have that. I'm not saying they weren't close. I'm not saying they weren't they weren't phenomenal chemistry issues. But Kawhi Leonard's an interesting dude, right?
Yes.
He's not particularly seemingly very vocal leader, and he's always just so stoic and quiet. And then on top of all that, we don't know if he's coming back next season. So that had to have factored in, I think. I think that's a good point. But let's talk a little bit about the Clippers. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because, again, they're gone. But Kawhi is a big piece of that puzzle, clearly. They did what they did against the Suns without him, which shows, how good this team can be. They beat the Suns twice. But Kawhi is interesting because he signed a 3-year deal. The third year, he played the first 2 already. And how horrible for the Clippers. I mean, they get one of the best players in the world, and then a pandemic hits, and it's a bubble, and then we have this weird abbreviated season this year. But those are the 2 seasons for Kawhi. This third season, he has an opt-out clause. He can opt out. He would give up $36 million. But then he can resign, and then resign for 1 year. That gives the Clippers his bird rights, and then he can sign a 5-year deal. I'm seeing numbers like $246 million, which is staggering. So it's interesting to see what the Clippers are going to do. Right now, I'm not even, people are asking, and there's a lot of Twitter chatter about what the Clippers are going to do, who they're going to bring in. You can't even start to talk about that until Kawhi signs. That first domino's got to fall. He has until August 1st to make that decision. My guess is he'll make it before then. But think back to 2 seasons ago, 2 off seasons ago. Kawhi waited until the last minute to pick the Clippers over the Lakers, and everything was on hold for both LA teams because they didn't know what they were going to do until Kawhi made his decision. It's the same thing again. The Clippers, but right now it's only the Clippers that are being, being held hostage, so to speak. The Clippers have to wait until Kawhi makes his decision. So I think it's interesting. I think it's fascinating. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be really telling. But I do think the Clippers are in pretty good shape, and I do think he will likely opt out and resign. That's my gut. As a West Coast guy, I don't know a lot of detail about East Coast teams. So I'll ask you this, and feel free to kick it back. What are your thoughts on the Clippers?
I have heard some trade rumors. Only rumor. I mean, nothing definite, but I've heard Miami Heat are going to make a big push for him.
Sure.
And I want to say the Mavs. There was another team.
I saw that too.
Yeah, the issue with I've had with Kawhi, and I think the Clippers are going through this right now, is that as incredible as a player as he is, he's not on the court that much. He does a lot of the Popovich, play a couple games here, a couple games there, which that's a whole nother debate on if guys should be doing that. But it's really funny how he didn't play a bunch of games during the season, yet he got injured in the playoffs. And it's kind of like, wait, so it is kind of pointless for you to not play these games or whatever. But he has great value, but at the same time, Paul George, he is so hit or miss, and I think he is not a franchise carrier. I think he is our lead guy's out. Can you handle 2 games putting up crazy numbers?
100%.
But that's a more in-depth thing, and I think it's really hard to see it from an outside perspective of, man, the Clippers are going to have a tough issue. I mean, because do you keep Paul George? Can he consistently be like this? If Kawhi opts out, is he able to carry this franchise? The Clippers made a bold move, picking 2 of the most kind of questionable. Paul George is pretty outspoken, but man, Kawhi Leonard being your lead guy, barely talking, keeps to himself. And then Paul George, who when he came in was very kind of, is he the guy? Can he run a team? Can he put it on his back? And this is what happens. You're going to have a tough decision. Personally, I think they could get a lot of trade value from him, especially if these injuries keep piling up and he keeps wanting to miss a lot of regular season games.
Yeah. Stephen A. Smith, who I'm not necessarily a big fan of, but said this about Paul George, and I think he nailed it. He said, Paul George is a superstar in this league, but there are levels. Okay. And I think that's great because he showed that he could take this team on his back. He went back to Phoenix, a tough place to play. You'll find out soon enough, and had a great game to force Game 6. But there are levels of superstars, right? And Paul George is kind of the lower tier, right? He needs an upper tier superstar, right? I think to succeed. And you said this. He's the kind of guy where your superstar is out. He'll be that guy for 2-3 games. But that's about it, right?
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
fine. That's fine. I tweeted not too long ago that every Michael Jordan needs his Scottie Pippen, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. Every Giannis needs his Chris Middleton, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you find players that are willing to accept those roles of 1A and A1, kind of, you're both great, you're both superstars, you're both making bank, but this guy's a little bit better than you are. That's pretty special.
Yes.
So we'll see. I think the Clippers are in good shape. Of course, should Kawhi opt out, that changes everything. But I do think it'll happen. But my gut is he will re-sign with the Clippers because that's where he can make the most money with those bird rights and have the most. What's the word I'm looking for? When you get a longer deal as opposed to a shorter deal, you have. I don't know what the word is. I'm either. I'll find it. I'll think of it later. But he stands to make more money, more security with the Clippers. But we'll see how it plays out. The offseason, like everything in the NBA this year, is going to be pretty short.
And we'll see what trades they put up for him. Because, I mean, hey, if you're putting up, I don't know how much value first-round picks have, but if you put up half your team and the Clippers realize this guy – get more injuries over the years, they could end up with a very deep team depending on how the trades look. But he's so weird. I just have no idea if he wants to stay or go. I mean,
and that's the thing about
Kawhi is.
And nobody knows. And that's why you read, sources tell me, no, it's bull. There's nobody knows, but except Kawhi and maybe one or two people close to him, and they're not talking.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I love this time of year, but we got a game to play.
That's right.
Our initial thoughts: Bucks versus Suns. I didn't look it up, and I know you and I chatted briefly, but we'll assume, and I think it's right to say the Suns have home court advantage. And Phoenix is a tough place to play. Let's just go under that assumption right now, although I don't think it's going to matter too much. What's your knee jerk right now? And I know you're still high from the victory. And I hate to ask you to, I've already asked you to talk about the Suns, and I'm asking you about what your thoughts are. But what do you think realistically? How many games does this go? And when do the Suns pack it up and go to Cancun?
At least 6.
Okay.
I mean, as much as I would love to say full-on sweep, blow out every game, I mean, to be honest, these are the best of the best teams, both of them, aside from Giannis for the most part. I think he'll be okay when it comes, but these are two very healthy teams, and I think it's going to go 7. But, hey, if it goes 6 and we win in 6, that's perfectly fine with me. But I don't think neither one of these teams are sweep caliber just because of how deep each team is. I just find it hard to believe that neither team would show up at least for a game or 2 games. I can't imagine that at all.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think it's going to be a good series. 6 sounds right. I think we need to see, because Chris Paul, nobody's healthy at this point. You are right to say that these are 2 healthy teams, but healthy is relative.
in quotes.
Yeah, exactly. Because Devin Booker broke his nose. Campaign tweaked an ankle. Chris Paul was pushed by Patrick Beverly, which meant nothing, but he did hurt his hand. And of course, Giannis, with that scary knee injury, everybody's dinged up right now.
Yes. But
I think all things considered, when I look at it, real objectively, the Bucks are a better team, man. And there is something, I think, to having gone through the process. It makes you hungrier, right? You made a great point. You and I were chatting just before we started the show, and you made a great point that Chris Paul is the Bucks in that he, as a player, has been beat down, and this is his first finals ever. He's made it to the conference finals. This is only his second time ever in the conference final, his first time ever in the finals. So he's had that process, right? But the Suns as a team have not, right? This is a young team. That's the best player is a young guy. Ayton's phenomenal, but also, relatively young. And the bright lights, I think, might be too much, for them. I think you're going to see this team come out just wherever game one is. The Bucks have got, I read something just real briefly, but I think the final start in 2 days. So the Bucks have 2 days off, but the Suns have already been off. So the Suns are going to have 5 days off before it starts.
Yeah.
So you're going to see in the first half of the first quarter, a Suns team that'll probably be up 15-3, my thinking, right? Because they're young, they're excited to be here, they're pumped, and the Bucks are just going to take it, right? They'll take the first punch, they'll rope a dope, right? And then they'll come back. I think that's how it'll play out. And the Bucks, as deep as the Suns are, I think the Bucks are a better defensive team, and they have an answer for everything, right? Brook Lopez is going to have to, bump up against Ayton. I think he can do it. And Ayton he's not a real rim protector. He did pretty good, but against the Clippers when he needed to, that's really not his game. And Brook Lopez can go out and shoot the three. Ayton doesn't like to venture that far out. So I think the Bucks are just built to beat this Suns team. And I do think there's something for the process. The Bucks are going to be just a little hungrier. I remember Shaq's team with Orlando going way back, right? Was up against, I want to say Houston, I'm almost certain. And the Magic were kind of like the Suns of the day. They didn't really struggle to get there. They were just there. And they, the Magic team was saying at the time, why not us? Why not us, right? But they weren't hungry enough. The Rockets had been there before. They had won before. They had Hakeem Olajuwon, and they swept 4-0. I don't think this will be a sweep. I agree with you. But I do think the Bucks are the hungrier team. They've worked harder to get here. Chris Paul's going to do everything he can. He will have another 30-point half more than likely. But this is the Bucks have got to be the clear favorite. So I know you probably disagree with me, but that's just what I think.
Yes, I think with both of these teams, there is a hunger to it. But at the same time, I mean, the Bucks have a couple players that have made it this far. But in general, I mean, I think it's going to be bright lights for everybody. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of why did you shoot that on both sides of the court. I think it's going to be a dogfight. And as for Chris Paul, I absolutely have loved his career and frankly thought he should be in the MVP discussion for years. I mean, the way he goes to these teams and they're nobodies, OKC and all, and now they're in the playoffs and win and look good. And I mean,
he turned around the Clippers franchise. He changed the Clippers franchise. Yeah. And
if he's on the court, as much as great as Booker and all those guys are, he is a constant threat because he can get everyone going. He knows exactly what to do. And, for the Bucks side, we have been doing things great. And you're like, oh, no problem. We'll do that next game. Nope. We decided to do something else or whatever.
And that's the hard thing about being a fan, man, is you want your team to be great every game. And when they're not, you get angry.
Oh, my goodness.
It's so hard, right? We take it personal.
Exactly.
I get it. Well, I think it's going to be great finals. I'm excited. It's nice to see teams that haven't been there in a while, and it'll be neat to think that one of these two teams is going to lift Larry O'Brien in a week or so. That's kind of cool. I'm excited. Yeah. Great segue to the final thought that I kind of wanted to talk about. I don't want to go into detail about this, but we talked a lot last season about whether or not the bubble championship that the Lakers won was an asterisk season. And my point was simple. Yeah, of course. Of course it is. Yeah. Because it's different, right? And I always, when people brought up asterisk, I always kind of went to the dictionary definition, which basically meant if it's different than what it's always been, then it has an asterisk. Yeah. That's it. So it's simple. Yeah, of course the bubble. How weird that season was. Super weird.
Yeah.
This season is super weird. No team played 82 games. The Memphis Grizzlies finished 9th, but we're in the playoffs because of the play-in tournament. There was a bunch of weirdness, injuries like we haven't seen in decades in the NBA. So this is definitely an asterisk season by virtue of just the definition of the word asterisk. But then somebody mentioned to me, and they were right when they said this. They go, so that's not what we mean by asterisk. We mean that this is a watered down, an illegitimate victory. And I started to think about it. And the first time that this came up as a conversation was when Shaq said it about the Spurs when they won an NBA lockdown season. It was a labor dispute. They only played 50 games, and they won the championship. Shaq famously said it was an asterisk. And he wasn't meaning they won because it was different. He meant to say they won, because they didn't deserve to win, right? It was a knock, right?
Yeah.
And so those are two different definitions of asterisk. Is this an asterisk in the sense that it's different? Of course it is. Is this an asterisk in the sense that whoever wins this doesn't necessarily deserve to be champion? No way. This is a deserved championship. I'm not buying that discussion at all. That's how I feel. What do you think?
I've frankly thought there have been many asterisk seasons, depending on when you look at it. But the thing is, for me personally, you have to go really in depth to understand how these dominoes fall every playoffs for every team. And prime example I have is the year, I want to say it was 2015, the Warriors. They went into the playoffs, and man, every team they played, that's when I think that was the year Kawhi got injured from the foot under, and he got that, ended up leaving San Antonio from it. But Kawhi's out of the game. What do you mean? That's an asterisk. And then I think they played the Rockets, and they had injuries and all that stuff. No one talked about it and the Warriors were great.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong.
No.
But I think it's very odd to say, some of these years, it should just be disregarded. To me, it sounds like that's the angry fan. And as for the Lakers last year, man, they had a bunch of veteran guys that got 5 months off to rest their bodies, to get healed up. And shocker, the younger teams, like the Clippers, that didn't have that chemistry and all that stuff, fell apart when they got to the bubble.
Yeah.
I just think you got to look at the whole spectrum of it. And I mean, frankly, I don't know a year that there hasn't been an asterisk. When you really look at it,
100%.
I mean,
it would be great in a perfect world if everybody played healthy, right? Everybody was 100% healthy. I think if that were the case from the beginning of the NBA to today, we'd have different championship teams. The Celtics and the Lakers wouldn't have 17 each, more likely. Yeah. They might have more, they might have less, but they would be different, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And my first thought goes back to the first Lakers super team. It was Shaq and Kobe, and they brought in Karl Malone and Gary Payton. That team went 28-3 to start the season. They were phenomenal. Yeah. They lost in the finals to the Detroit Pistons. And I will forever believe that it was because Karl Malone was hurt. Karl Malone, at the end of his career, he wasn't phenomenal. He wasn't great, but he was a good player, a key piece of that team. He was hurt. Detroit won. Credit to Detroit. Phenomenal team. I'm not discrediting anything, but it speaks to your point. You could say that's an asterisk, right?
Yes.
It's a silly argument. Whoever wins this championship deserves it. And it'll likely be the Bucks. Go ahead.
I also love the fact that Phoenix is the one that got watered down in these playoffs and whatnot. Meanwhile, we faced this juggernaut Brooklyn Nets team with only healthy KD, who had to put up 60 a night and do everything. Harden was definitely not Harden. I mean, I can't give him too much. I've never been the biggest Harden supporter. I've thought he's gotten a little too much credit for some things. But man, that injury, he was not 100%. I do not think that was a playoff mistake. I think he just he's injured. It's a hamstring injury, which he's had before. And Kyrie out? Oh my goodness. But at the same time, both of those guys have gone through their struggles of missing games, not being there, and the Bucks won barely, but it's the same way.
It's about the W.
Yep, exactly right.
End of the day, it's about the W, and you got the W, on you go. and
That's
somebody
right.
who's going to get it, and they are going to deserve it. I wanted to ask you
Exactly.
real quick before we go, because every single time you watch a Bucks game, they always pan to those people that are outside. What do they call that area? The deer
Oh my
something?
gosh. Yeah, the oh my gosh. What fan do I look like forgetting this name? Oh my gosh.
It'll come
I'm
to you later
blanking.
tonight. I
It's
know.
gonna come to me like that one word of yours.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. I know.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Yeah.
been there? That looks amazing.
I have not. I
Okay.
mean, I couldn't be farther from Milwaukee, living
Okay.
in Virginia, and
Oh, all right.
oh my gosh, love to visit. I would love to. I mean, hey, if someone finds some tickets for this finals game, oh my gosh,
All right.
I'll buy the plane ticket tomorrow. But
All right. If I hear of anything, I'll promise to let you know. All right, man. Well, this is great. Thank you so much. I'm really glad we got a chance to talk to a Buck fan. Phenomenal victory. Congratulations. You guys deserve to be here, and I think it's going to be a really great battle against the Phoenix Suns. Bo and I are part of a group called the Peach Basket. We're more than just a site. We're a group of like-minded, passionate basketball fans. Like Bo, I like to call us fan experts. These are people that know the game, love the game, are passionate about the game. We write about it. We talk about it. If you're watching this and you love your team, you're probably one of us. Read our stuff, and we're excited to hear from you. We'll be back next Saturday. We're running back NBA week in review. Next week, we'll find out, right, who's up in the NBA finals. And again, it'll probably be the Bucks. We'll see you next week.